So you say you want to stand out on four wheels. Well, a number of folks go the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 route, and when it comes to color choices, they make the very unfortunate decision to go with something garish. So yes, they stand out, but in the process, they also become a douchebag. What if there were another option, where you could stand out, put the majority of that money back in the bank, but in the process, tell the world you don't really care about standing out? Okay, so what is this magical car that enables one to stand out in society while simultaneously avoiding all the pitfalls of cars finished in pastel colors? Answer: Morgan. You remember those. Built in Malvern Link since 1919, and Soshiro Honda famously said, when all the consolidation is done and all the car companies come together and there's basically 5 left, one of them will be Morgan. Well, Morgan, way back in the day, wanted to make an end run around tax schemes in England, and the founder famously found that there's less taxes for two-wheel motorcycles than there are cars. So he said, what if I were to do a three-wheel car? Would that be taxed as a motorcycle? Hence, we've had a three-wheeler for almost 100 years. They brought it back in 2012. You and I drove that in 2012 and absolutely fell in love with it, to the point where I said it's probably the coolest car on the planet. Well, they stopped making it last year because they were going to make this. So what's different? Well, it no longer has a motorcycle engine. You see, if you know Morgans, you know they've had a long-standing relationship with Ford over the years, specifically Ford of Europe, so they decided to pilfer an engine from them. Those of you that have driven a Ford Escape front-wheel drive, at least here in the US, you probably know the Ford Dragon 3-cylinder. It's a 1.5, and this is quite a step up from the S&S 2-liter twin we had in the previous three-wheeler. Here we're almost 50% more horsepower. Now, huge point, it still retains the god of transmissions, at least in the manual world, from the Mazda Miata. It is rear-wheel drive. The rear wheel is 15 inches, basically something that comes off of a motorcycle, and in the front, they're 20 inches. In terms of performance figures, it's respectable. It's not like other British performance cars. 0 to 60, 7 seconds. VMAX, 130 miles an hour, and then believe it or not, fuel economy is kind of a thing here. I think the tank is like 5, 6 some odd gallons. And in terms of fuel economy, at least in the US, they call it for 40, 48, and 42 combined. So this, unexpected in more ways than one, 1,400 pounds. Let me say that again, 1,400 pounds. Or, depending on express your weights and measures, 635 kilograms. Put another way, that is about 1,000 pounds lighter than a Miata with that. There's no sport mode. Now, as we get underway, I feel the need to clarify an important point. When one thinks of a hand-built British sports car, one imagines something with brutish power, something that's fast. This is not that something. Even with the extra horsepower and the extra torque over the S&S, this is still not a fast car. It's sprightly. That's the best way to describe it. Now, one thing I feel is missing here is the extra torque that one would think would come from the 3-cylinder engine. If we're being pedantic here, it's only 7 pounds more of torque, but why is that important? Well, that's where the memory of the previous three-wheeler kind of clouds my brain, because I feel as if that one, it had more pulling power, in this case, pushing power, than what this one has on the road today. Then we move on to the transmission, and here it still has that goodness from that Mazda Miata transmission we already discussed, but don't think this is the same experience that you have when you drive a Miata. A transmission is not a transmission alone. It's a big function of what engine it's paired with, and there the Mazda engineers have the benefit of having created the engine and the transmission, and thus the transmission, it's otherworldly. Here it is unusually good, but it loses a bit when it's paired with the Ford Dragon engine. Okay, so with all that said, let's get back to some clarification here. Is this thing slow? No. Does this thing need more power? Not really. Could it use a little bit more torque? That's something they should take under advisement. Those of you that know this show or know Morgans know two things. Number one, I am a complete freak about Morgans. And number two, when this show first started 14 years ago, I went over to England and I built a Morgan Aero Super Sports from start to finish. That car ended up going to Pebble Beach. And in that episode, I dispelled a misnomer about Morgans. Most people think Morgans have a chassis that is made of wood. That is not the case. They have a steel chassis and a frame made of ash wood, even the Morgan three-wheeler we drove 10 years ago. This one, on the other hand, breaks with over 100 years of Morgan tradition in that it's not constructed out of wood. At least the majority of it's not constructed out of wood. There is some wood in places like underneath the seat cushions, which tells me when this car was constructed on August 2nd, or at least this seat cushion. You see, this is Morgan's monocoque design. So that no longer a separate frame and a chassis. It's like every other modern day car. Now another break with Morgan construction tradition, say that fast 3 times, is where the engine is placed. It's no longer hanging out in front of the car like the V-twin was. Now it's underneath the cowl, which necessitates radiators. But they have dual purpose radiators, so they're on the side here of the vehicle, and they use the opportunity to make the vehicle more practical. Now they actually have storage, or at least areas one can put suitcases hanging off the side blades, which work with a design of the radiators. And now we come to the question of how this drives. And there we literally have a lot of moving parts. Number one, you can't get around the fact that this is a three-wheeler. What does that mean? Well, it doesn't really drive like a car, but it doesn't drive like a motorcycle. Good example of that, when you're driving down the road and you hit a bump, the rear wheel likes to pick itself up, and it has an approximation of where it thinks it should land, kind of like an old Corvette, but even more so. Then there's the reality of the length and the wheelbase of the vehicle. This is a little bit longer than the car it replaces, but the most important part we need to understand, the wheelbase. Believe it or not, the wheelbase of this is longer than a 911. Now, why is that important? Well, anybody looking at this thing would immediately assume this would have horrible ride quality. But in reality, when the road quality comes up to meet the car, meaning it's glass smooth, the ride quality of this is on par with other British luxury cars. And now we press on to a public service announcement regarding driving dynamics of these on freeways. These, they're envisioned for country roads, mountain roads, or like today, canyon roads. Put another way, leisurely driving, or could be spirited leisurely driving. That's where they shine. Put it on a freeway, that's a different experience, not a bad experience. Anyone who's ridden a motorcycle would understand what they go through. You get beat up a lot. So when they say 130 miles an hour VMAX, that is a bridge definitely too far. I'd say the line of demarcation is around 80 miles an hour. But now, back to the type of driving this thing is meant for, and there we have 3 notes. First stop would be the brakes, see what I did there. Definitely decent stopping power. However, driving it aggressively like you see today, or if one were to use it in stop and go traffic, could use some more braking power. Then the steering. There, it gloriously has no assist, meaning no power steering whatsoever, which is magnificent at speeds like you're seeing today. Even driving in a parking lot, not an issue at all. The issue is the turning radius is equivalent to a city bus. That's just kind of the reality of a three-wheeler. Then we move on to the drive system here. This is like a Minotaur in that it's part car and part motorcycle. It's half and half. And the half in the back, it's belt drive, which I get it. That's what you get kind of off the shelf from motorcycle parts. However, the sound, you hear it. You can't get around it. You notice it more here than others. I would argue the vehicle overall, the driving experience is so much more rewarding that one would need to change this to a shaft drive to get away from that sound. No, it is not that time to play your favorite game of mine, the options game, because we have to do a case study. A case study on how to bespoke build a car and import it into a country it's technically not legal for sale. You see, what you are looking at is on offer in the UK for the equivalent of $53,937.98. Sounds incredibly affordable, and when you think about how special this is, for about 54 grand, there's really no competition. But in reality, the car you are looking at is not 54 grand. This car has, how do I put this? 31 different options. But it's not like you can have this and then you can have this. Rather, you can have a range of things. Like that is lilac. I do not like that color. There were much prettier choices at the dealer that I picked it up. And that brings up the point here. You don't so much pick a color as you pick a tranche of colors. Like there's 3 standard colors. Then there's optional colors that are not metallic for $707.18. There are 14 of those. Then there are 13 metallic colors. Those are each $1,182.60. This one, I believe, is a pearl color, the most expensive, $3,440.83. And for the avoidance of doubt, there are 3 different pearl choices on offer. If you want to make any of these colors a matte finish, that's an additional $469.48. Then you want to have a different finish for the blade down here. That's an additional $469.47. It's even the colors on the wheels. Like for example, the basic color is free, but there are 3 different colors on offer that you would pay almost an additional $600, kind of like they did here. Then the interior, it comes fitted as standard with vinyl. If you want leather, that can range anywhere from $1,063.74 to this one, the Typhoon leather, $1,653.02. However, what you are looking at is a different stitch pattern. That's an additional some odd $500. Then a fascinating option that can be sort of fitted to these things. They can document the build of your car in photographs. Now, I highly suggest you go check out my episode where I built an Aero Super Sports from start to finish, and you can see what the factory looks like. It's totally cool. If someone is buying a vehicle like this, I would highly suggest, no matter where one lives, they make the trek to Malvern Link and see your car being built or a car like it. Say hello to John Burbage while you're there. He runs the shop. Amazing guy. Then there's an unusual option here, and it's infotainment on a Morgan, something that usually doesn't go with a Morgan. Now, does it have Apple CarPlay? No. Android Auto? No. But you can get from the factory a navigation system, and technically it's in the car, but technically it's not. It's this Beeline system, and it sits in front of the steering wheel, works with your cell phone. And then we press on to a lockable storage box underneath the passenger seat. That is an additional $350.62. I'd say very usable. Then the dashboard on this one is finished in a matte wood. Sadly, it's a dark wood. I saw one with a light Soprano, looks stunning, especially a vehicle like this. Then if you want to buy this car, it's not so much like you go to the dealer and it's there and this is the price and there's a destination charge. You see, there is a surcharge from the factory that is considered not Europe, basically rest of the world, whether it's here in North America or somewhere else. One has to pay an additional $2,552.50, which brings us to a subtotal of this vehicle of $74,159.04. However, we're not done yet. You see, the US government, they want their pound of flesh in import duties, and then all the guys that do the drayage at whatever port it comes in, basically the guys you heard about in the news over the past 2 years. That's an additional $3,643, which brings us to a total retail price of $77,802.04. Certainly cheaper than a $350,000 Italian something to stand out. By now, you should be seeing a general theme here. This isn't just a new Morgan three-wheeler, this is a completely reimagination of a Morgan three-wheeler experience. Why do I say that? Well, look at things like the interior. They have changes that make it more luxurious, if you could call it that. Like, for example, the pedals, they are adjustable now. Obviously, the seat is not adjustable, but one can move the pedals forward and backward to adjust for the size of the driver. Then if that were not enough, there's a fan. I don't want to call it a heater because you can't really adjust the temperature, but it is a warm temperature. So the idea is one can drive this thing in, say, 40-degree Fahrenheit weather and not be cold if they have a jacket and a helmet on. To complement that, they've added the option of heated seats, which I have to say, literally burn your ass. I don't think I've ever experienced a heated seat that gets you this warm in any other car, even German cars. And then, believe it or not, to really cap off the whole luxury experience, the steering column is adjustable. So this is a downright usable vehicle right now. Yeah, people are going to look down on you and say, that's a very odd looking car, or they're going to say, oh my God, that's the coolest looking car on the planet. But either way, one is now more comfortable in this experience. Okay, so what have you and I learned today? Well, I would argue two things. Number one, Soichiro Honda's prophecy from many years ago is indeed proving to be true as consolidation gets further down the road. And number two, this is absolutely positively still one of the coolest cars on the road today, bar none. Which brings us to the wish list, and here I have three things, only one for this specific car. This, as you can tell, I am smitten, but the only thing I don't like about it, digital gauges. This is a Morgan. Morgan is about timeless design and style. Can we at least have the option of analog gauges? I didn't see it anywhere on the price list. Number two, can we please, oh please, oh please, bring the new Plus 6 over? Basically, that's a Morgan four-wheeler, basically a car, with a BMW B58 inline six, magnificent. And number three, can we bring something back that is totally just ridiculous, like an Aero Supersports V8, crazy power, manual transmission, and bring that to the US? If you could sort that out, I'd greatly appreciate it. And this is the point of the episode that I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV on Word, MotoManTV on Word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, if you like cars like this, I would highly suggest you watch my annual Bob Boniface's Cars in My Yard Party episodes. We just put our 2023 edition out, and it was probably the best one we had. We had 115, 120 cars. But these are the personal cars of the people that imagine, design, engineer, and build all the cars in the Detroit area. So you can check out that episode here. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.